Hey everybody, we're live and in stereo. So up until this point, what we've done is we've started off with acid, bases, and salt. We've done the introduction to acid, bases, and salt, and then we started off doing the reactions for acid, bases, and salts, right? So the first reactions that we discussed was that whenever you guys have a metal and it reacts with an acid, it's gonna give you guys what and what? It's gonna give you guys an ionic compound which you called a salt, and it's gonna give you hydrogen gas, right? And we've discussed the reasoning for that. For example, you have magnesium as the metal and it reacts with an acid HCl. The only reason that magnesium can react with an acid is because if you check your reactivity series out, magnesium is more reactive than hydrogen, right? If you write the reactivity series down, please stop calling me a curly zebra, instead try learning how copper saves gold. You understand that magnesium is more reactive than hydrogen. That's why it can displace this hydrogen, and that's why we call this reaction the displacement reaction. The hydrogen is displaced, you get H2 gas, and then a salt is going to be formed, an ionic compound. And which ionic compound will be formed? Magnesium will actually make an ionic compound with Cl, right? And the formula for that would be, since magnesium is in group 2, it makes an ion of 2 plus. Cl is in group 7, it makes an ion of 1 minus. So therefore the formula would be MgCl2. And the way we balanced this first equation was that we said we could balance it through the ionic charges, right? So we know that for one Mg2 plus there should be 2 minuses, right? You have a 2 plus charge, there should be a 2 minus charge, but Cl is only 1 minus. So what do I multiply the Cl with to get a 2 minus? Because charges should be balanced out. So we multiply it with 2, therefore you insert the 2 right here beautifully, and then in the end so all these three things are automatically balanced. In the end you just need to balance out the hydrogen. So if you check the hydrogens out, you have 2 times 1, you have 2 hydrogens here, and automatically you have 2 hydrogens on the right hand side. And the most difficult balancing question that could come for this would be, obviously it won't come in your paper, but the most difficult that I had made was basically aluminum reacting with like H3, बल्कि aluminum नहीं था, इससे मुश्किल भी मैंने कराया था. I think it was, yeah, barium plus H3PO4. If I react these two, what is the product that's going to be made, and how do you write the balanced equation, right? So what you do is you say, okay, barium is more reactive than hydrogen, it's going to displace this hydrogen, and therefore an ionic salt is going to be formed, which is going to be barium phosphate, and this hydrogen which is displaced, that would be formed as hydrogen gas. So hydrogen gas is going to be formed, and an ionic compound is going to be formed. Now what is going to be the formula for this ionic compound, and how do you balance this stuff out? We know that barium phosphate is going to make barium is in group 2, it has a charge of 2 plus. Phosphate is has a charge of 3 minus. It's a polyatomic ion. You know that 2 plus is not equal to 3 minus, right? So the way what we did last time was we could either take LCM for the 2 or 3 का LCM ले ले, you 6 आता है, right? So 2 को मैं किससे multiply करूँ कि 6 आए 3 से, और 3 को मैं किससे multiply करूँ 6 आए 2 से. So then you have a 6 plus and a 6 minus charge. The other way to go about it was that you have a 3 here, multiply it right here, and you had a 2 here, multiply it right here, and automatically what you realize is 3 times 2 is 6 plus, and 2 times 3 is 6 minus, and that's the balanced charge, right? So you insert a 2 beautifully right here, and you insert a 3 beautifully right here. And what's going to be the formula for barium phosphate? Barium is 2 plus, PO4 is 3 minus, you cross multiply, you get Ba3 PO4 whole twice, and that's how and even if you just look at this, you have 3 barium 2 plus ions, you have 3 barium 2 plus ions, you have 2 phosphate ions, you have 2 phosphate ions, and automatically these three would be balanced out. The only thing that you need to balance out is hydrogen. How many hydrogens do you have on the left? You have 2 times 3, 6 hydrogens, so you have 2 here. So 2 को मैं किससे multiply करूँ कि 6 आए, x is equal to 6 over 2, that's going to give me 3, and beautifully we insert that 3 right here. ठीक है? So that was the first equation that we learned how to balance. The next equation was that whenever you have an acid and you react it with a base, that's going to give you guys salt and water, right? And we learned the definition of a base. You know that bases are either metal oxides or metal hydroxides. So first of all, we discussed the base metal hydroxide. So we said acid plus any metal hydroxide, which is going to be a base, is going to give you salt and water. And we also discussed how to balance that and why is it going to give you salt and water. So for example, if we take like let's suppose magnesium hydroxide, which is our metal hydroxide. So metal hydroxide is magnesium hydroxide, and let's suppose we reacted with an acid which is going to be phosphoric acid, H3PO4. Now why is phosphoric acid H3PO4? It has a charge of plus, PO4 is 3 minus, cross multiply H3PO4, magnesium hydroxide is MgOH twice because magnesium has a charge of 2 plus, OH is minus, cross multiply, you get MgOH whole twice, right? Now magnesium plus H3PO4, obviously the hydroxide ions and the hydrogen ions, they're gonna go together to give you guys H2O, and then you're gonna have a salt that's gonna be forming. Now which salt is gonna be forming? What is left? Magnesium is left and phosphate is left, so magnesium phosphate is the salt that's gonna be forming. And what is gonna be the formula of that salt? Magnesium will have a charge of 2 plus because it's in group 2, and phosphate is a polyatomic ion with a 3 minus charge. Now again, we know that 2 plus is not equal to 3 minus. How do you make the charges equal? You either take LCM, which is 6, और फिर आप 6 से आप इसको कर लेते हैं, which is 2 times 2 को मैं किससे multiply करूँ कि 6 3, so 3 times 2 is a 6 plus charge, and 3 को मैं किससे multiply करूँ कि 2, so you get 2 times 3, that's a 6 minus charge. So 6 plus is equal to 6 minus. And the other way I said was take this 3, multiply it here, take this 2, multiply it here, automatically the charges are balanced, right? So 3 times 2, that's 6 plus charge, and 2 times 3, that's 6 minus. So you just insert the 3 beautifully right here, and you just insert the 2 beautifully right here, right? And then what we do is we write the formula for that salt, which is gonna be magnesium is thrice and PO4 is whole twice, right? Because you have 3 magnesium 2 plus ions and 2 PO4 3 minus ions, right? Or the other way to do it was magnesium is 2 plus, PO4 is 3 minus, cross multiply, you actually get this beautiful beauty right here. And then automatically these 3 are going to be balanced in this equation. The only thing that you need to balance out is either balance the hydrogens, oxygens will automatically balance out in the H2O, or balance out the O's, and hydrogens would automatically balance out. Now I can just balance out hydrogen because that's much easier, because or you could do the O, they're both the same thing. So 2 times 3, that's 6 hydrogens, and then you have 3 times 2, 6 hydrogens here and 6 hydrogens here, so in total you have 12 hydrogens on the left hand side. How 12? Because these were already 2, you times it by 3, so you have 6 hydrogens. And okay, we are being we are being blessed with the presence of Arbab Muin Rasik. Amazing. Okay, so 3 times 2, that's 6, and then 2 times 3, that's 6. So you have 12 hydrogens on the left. How many hydrogens should you have on the right? 12. So 2 को मैं किससे multiply करूँ कि 12 x is equal to 12 over 2, that's 6. And that's the most difficult balancing that could come for this question. But now you know the concept is pretty easy, right? And yeah, आपके पेपर में ऐसी इतनी मुश्किल balancing नहीं आती. But if you guys know the concept, boom shakalaka, that's how easy it is. You don't have to go through a trial and error method ke oh pehle 2 lagaun kidhar 3 kidhar lagaun. No, simple, we use the ions to balance out our charges, right? Then the next acid base reaction was the acid reacting with a metal oxide, and we know that a metal oxide, most difficult balancing made easy. Thank you Shab Rahman. So metal oxide ke sath jab acid react karega, metal oxide is also a base. Again, that's going to give you salt and water, right? Now acid, and let's take a metal oxide. Let's take the most difficult example for this as well, which is going to be basically, let's take barium oxide le lete hain as our metal oxide. So barium oxide plus our acid, let's take H3PO4 as our acid. So barium oxide plus our acid, what is going to be formed? Obviously salt and water is going to be formed, and the reason for that is the H's and the O's right here, the O's from the metal oxide and the H's from the acid, they're going to go together and form H2O. And then how do you make the salt? Well, the formula of the ionic compound would be that barium makes an ion of 2 plus, so you have barium 2 plus, PO4 makes an ion of 3 minus, and therefore if you check this out again, you have a 2 plus and a 3 minus. So what we do is we take this 3 and multiply it here, we take this 2 and multiply it here, and the reason is pretty simple. It's because we want to balance out the charges, right? So 3 times 2, that's 6 plus, and 2 times 3, that's 6 minus. And the other way again would be either taking the LCM of 2 and 3. The LCM of 2 and 3 is 6, so 2 को मैं किससे multiply करूँ कि 6 आए 3 के साथ, 3 को मैं किससे multiply करूँ कि 6 आए 2 के साथ, right? So you insert the 3 beautifully right here, and you insert the 2 beautifully right here. And then what is the formula for the ionic compound? You say that you have 3 barium 2 plus ions, so Ba3, and you have 2 phosphate ions, so whole twice. Or what you could have done is, again, Ba has a charge of 2 plus, PO4 is 3 minus, cross multiply, you get Ba3 PO4 whole twice. Now these 3 are automatically balanced. We just balance out the H2O, either balance out the hydrogens in the water or just balance out the oxygens in the water. दोनों में से एक कर ले, एक खुद हो जाएगा, right? So let's balance out the hydrogens. You have 2 times 3, you have 6 hydrogens on the left hand side. 2 को मैं किससे multiply करूँ कि 6 आए. What should I multiply 2 with? it to get 6. X equals 6 over 2, that's 3. So beautifully, that's like the most difficult balancing that could come in your paper. And how easy it is, man. And the other ways that I've also taught you, the other way would be using water to balance out this equation, using water to balance out the acid-base equation, right? So I've taught that previously. You could check the previous lessons out for that. But I think using the ionic compound is much easier than taking water again and again, right? Water की कहानी मैं बताता हूँ कि water से क्यों होता है, उसकी भी reason है, because they're all neutralization reactions, right? And like we discussed earlier, neutralization reactions are those reactions, those acid-based reactions in which salt and water is formed. So neutralization reaction की खासियत ये कि water is always going to be formed. That's why we say कि whenever you guys are, you know, using acids, and maybe like, you know, misplace हो जाते हैं, गलती से कहीं गिर जाता है, quickly add a base on top of it, right? So that the acid and base, they neutralize each other and salt and water is formed, so it's no longer corrosive for you. But the problem is, मेरे एक student मुझे कह रहा था एक वक्त last year की बात है, 2 years ago, a student when he ended up with an A star, लेकिन मुझे कहते सर तो ये जो हम लोग तेज़ाब एक दूसरे पे फेंकते, तो अगर मैं किसी पे तेज़ाब फेंकूँ और फिर उस पे बेस फेंकूँ तो वो तो फिर बच जाएगा. मैंने कहा बेटा जब तक आपने बेस फेंका होगा ना, तेज़ाब ने उसका बुरा हाल किया होगा. All his insides would have been burnt, all his skin would have been burnt, जब तक आपने बेस डालना शुरू किया होगा, राइट? सो उससे कुछ नहीं होगा, जैसे तेज़ाब इन कांटेक्ट आ जाता है बात ही ख़त्म हो जाती है इंसान की. Okay, now these were all the 3 reactions that we did for acid, bases and salts. The fourth reaction for an acid base is, what is तेज़ाब? तेज़ाब is basically acid जो आप वॉशरूम साफ, खैर वॉशरूम के लिए तो आप concentrated sodium hydroxide, इसमें वो गंदी स्मेल नहीं होती जिससे गटर साफ करते, that's basically concentrated sodium hydroxide. लेकिन तेज़ाब is basically like, you know, all those acids that you use to clean stuff, like not Harpic is not तेज़ाब, Harpic is basic. It's not Harpic sodium hydroxide उसमें soapy, right? Harpic soapy है ना, anything that is soapy वो base है automatically, right? Because base gives you that soapy texture. Not think about it like तेज़ाब की कैसे मैं आपको, किसी के पास HCl hydrochloric acid is तेज़ाब, लेकिन I'm thinking of a Rasik stop. I'm thinking of a, what's it called, of a practical example for it. Yes, vinegar. शाब्दुल बिल्कुल ठीक कह रहे हैं, vinegar तेज़ाब होता है, but it's like a weak acid, right? So तेज़ाब आप basically ये tiles, खैर tiles के साथ अगर आप तेज़ाब इस्तेमाल करें tiles तो ख़राब हो जाते हैं, but चीज़ें साफ़ करने के लिए होता है इधर उधर, right? I'll find out more practical examples and then I'll share with you which you could resonate with. ठीक है, now the fourth equation is, whenever you take a metal carbonate and you react it with an acid, that's going to give you salt and water, right? Because obviously this is going to be an acid-base reaction. Metal carbonate are weak bases, right? They're weak bases, but they're also bases. So they're also going to go an acid-base reaction. But the problem is, because of the carbonate ion, you will also end up with something called carbon dioxide, which we release all day long, and that is leading to, you know, that is leading to global warming, right? And global heating. So carbon dioxide emissions should be reduced by planting more trees and so on and so forth, right? So how do you write these equations and how do we balance this out? Pretty easy. Let's suppose you guys have you know, a metal carbonate like sodium carbonate, Na2CO3. Now why is it Na2CO3? If you guys don't know how I'm writing these formulas, go watch moles से prerequisite stoichiometry का prerequisite जो video था उसमें I've taught you guys how to make formulas, right? So sodium is in group 1, has a charge of 1 plus, carbonate has a charge of 2 minus, cross multiply, you get Na2CO3. That's how the formula for sodium carbonate, and that's how the naming sodium carbonate is coming. So if you are having difficulty in naming or formula, go watch the prerequisite video for stoichiometry जो हमने बहुत पहले discuss की थी, ठीक है? So if sodium carbonate and I react it with, let's suppose, hydrochloric acid, HCl, that's going to give me salt, water and carbon dioxide. Now how is it going to give me salt, water and carbon dioxide? The hydrogen in the acid is going to take up the, you know, is going to react with the oxygens in the carbonate ion to give you guys water. Now, obviously, the oxygen and hydrogens would be used to give you water, and the carbon and oxygens would therefore be used to give you carbon dioxide. So the carbon and oxygen would be used to give you carbon dioxide. And then the last bit is the salt. Now salt is that ionic compound which is going to be formed. So you have sodium, let me change the color, you have sodium which is left, and you have Cl which is left. So the positive ion right here and the negative ion right here is going to form your beautiful salt. And what's going to be formula for Na and Cl? Sodium chloride ka formula kya hoga? Na has a charge of plus, Cl has a charge of minus, NaCl is formed. Now if you check this out, Na has a charge of plus, Cl has a charge of minus, they're automatically balanced. So either be A, either be A, right? And this is also 1. So these three are automatically balanced with you guys. Now in the end what you're going to do is, then the next step is balance out the for these equations. What we do is, first of all, आप जब ये ions इस्तेमाल करते हैं तो ये three तो automatically balance हो जाते हैं. The next step is balance out the carbons, and then in the end balance out either the hydrogens or the oxygens. Either hydrogens balance करें या oxygen balance. Now let's check it out. You have carbon right here, that's 1, and you have 1 carbon right here, so carbons are balanced. And if you check the hydrogens, you have 1 hydrogen right here and you have 2 hydrogens right here. So that's the only thing that is not balanced. Now how do we balance this? 2 को मैं किससे multiply करूं कि 1 आए? 2 को मैं किससे multiply करूं कि 1 आए? X is, right? So X is equal to 1 over 2. And we basically insert the 1 over 2 right here. Now if you don't want this fraction, what you could do is you could multiply this entire equation. Oh my god, wait. You didn't have, these are not balanced. Wait. There's something that went wrong. And you know what went wrong? You didn't have yes, thank you very much, Khwaja. You didn't have 1 Na plus here. You had 2 Na pluses here automatically. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yes. So you had 2 Na pluses also. 2 Na plus के लिए कितने Cl minuses चाहिए? Obviously need 2 Cl minuses. So we take this and we insert the beautiful 2 right here, right? And then the next step was, so these three are now automatically gonna be balanced. But the thing is that 2 Na plus and 2 Cl minuses are gonna give you 2 NaCl. So you have to keep this in mind for some reason. कुछ reactions में ये तभी होता है जब आपके पास इधर 2 आ जाता है, right, with the metal. So you have to be careful because 1 Na plus and 1 Cl minus gives you 1 NaCl. So if you have 2 Na plus and 2 Cl minuses, they're gonna give you 2 NaCls. Now these three are automatically balanced. The only thing that you need to, yes, you could use the fraction, and I also prefer them. But the thing is, अगर वो आपको ऐसे dots करके दे देना, they're like fill in the blanks, right? And when they are balanced, आप जब खुद balanced equation लिखी used fractions, no problem. But if they give you dots, then it's better to not use the fraction, right? क्योंकि बल्कि आप फिर भी इस्तेमाल कर सकते हो because examiner says में हम mark देंगे, but still I'd be like be on the safe side. And you know जब ऐसे dots करके वो आपको दे देते हैं ना कि this plus this, और इधर आपको कहते हैं balance the right the balanced coefficients, तो उसमें फिर आप fractions ना ही लिखे तो बेहतर. Fractions बस ख़त्म करना ही होता है ना, आप multiply कर दो 2 के साथ. Now balance out the carbons. You have 1 carbon here and 1 carbon here. Carbons are balanced. How many hydrogens do you have? 2 hydrogens here and 2 here. Everything is balanced, right? Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Now the next is like, let's suppose I give you another, the toughest example that could come in your paper, right? Come in your paper, it's not gonna come in your paper, but the toughest example that I could give you, it's something like this. So let's suppose we have aluminum carbonate, which is gonna be Al2CO3 whole thrice. That's aluminum carbonate. How do I know that? Aluminum has a charge of 3 plus, carbonate is 2 minus, you cross multiply, you get Al2CO3 whole thrice, right? And then plus an acid, let's suppose we take sulfuric acid, which is H2SO4. H2SO4, we are blessed with Hafsas present. Oh my god. So H2SO4, I think आप लोग सारे acid bases and salts की इंतजार में ही थे, सारे आ गए माशाल्लाह किस जगह से आज सूरज निकला है. Okay, so H2SO4 के साथ react, obviously it's a metal carbonate, and a metal carbonate reacts with an acid to give you salt, water and carbon dioxide. How will it give you the H's in the H's Maghrib se? Okay, the H's in the acid is gonna react with the O's to give you guys, you know, H2O, and then the C and the O's are going to react together to give you guys your carbon dioxide. And the only thing that is left now is your salt, and the salt that's going to be formed is going to be aluminum sulfate, because these are the only 2 things left. So if I use a different color, that's my sulfate and that's my aluminum. Now let's balance this entire equation by using our ionic compound, that's aluminum sulfate. Now how many Als do you have? You have 2 Al3 pluses. Keep this in mind. हमने ऊपर यही गलती की, हमारे पास 2 NAs थे, हमने उसको 1 consider कर दिया. So you have 2 Al3 pluses, right? And how many sulfates do you have? You only have 1 sulfate, 1 SO4 2 minus. Now if you check the charges out, 2 times 3, that's 6 plus, but you only have 2 minus. So what should I multiply the 2 with to get 6 minus, because we need the charges to be balanced. तो इसको मैं किससे multiply करूँ? इसको मैं करूँ मगर 3 से multiply, because 2 times 3 that's 6 plus, and 3 times 2 that's 6 minus. You insert the 3 right here, and you guys might say insert the 2 too. No, this 2 was already present, right? We only insert the things that we are adding from our side. So 3 से ये 3 मैंने insert कर दिया. And then if you check this out, which the formula, which is Al2, the formula is going to be Al2SO4 whole thrice. The reason is you have 2 Al3 pluses and 3 SO4 2 minuses. Or if you want to write the proper, if you want to go for the trick way, the trick was Al has a 3 plus ion, SO4 is 2 minus, cross multiply, you still end up with Al2SO4 whole thrice. And that's the beauty, right? So now automatically these 3 are balanced. Ye 3 automatically balanced. Then what was the next step for metal carbonates in this? We said balance out carbons and then in the end balance out hydrogens or oxygen. I am talking about, sir, isn't 2 present due to carbonate? So would you consider it here? Sorry? What do you mean isn't 2 present? Wait, let me just do this and then you could use the mic, okay? So you have to balance out carbons. How many carbons are there? You have 3 times 1. You have 3 carbons on the left, so you should have 3 on the right. So 1 को मैं किससे multiply करूँगी? 3i x is equal to 3. So you insert the beautiful 3 here and then just balance out the oxygens. Now balancing out the oxygens might be a little tricky because you have oxygens here and oxygens here and then counting them and balance it. So let's just balance out the hydrogens, right? So 3 times 2, you have 6 hydrogens on the left. How many do you have on the right? You have 2. So 2 को मैं किससे multiply करूँगी? 6i x is equal to 6 over 2. That's 3. Insert it here, and that's the most difficult balancing question that could come in your entire chemistry forever and ever, because that's the most extent that the charges can go, and that's the greatest extent where the charges can go, and so on and so forth. So now that's the easy. आपको जब आसान नजर आएंगे, you guys go, it's halwa, right? Yes, Rasik, use the mic if you have any question. You've understood it, never mind. Okay, chalo, that's great. Now the next equation that is a part of your course. So अभी तक हमने कौन से की, चलो हम ये आखिरी वाला भी कर लेते, then we'll discuss all of them in detail, right? The next equation is which most teachers don't teach. I don't know why. I know आपके स्कूलों में हमें भी नहीं पढ़ाया गया था, पता नहीं टीचर्स क्यों ये नहीं पढ़ाते, लेकिन आपके सिलेबस में बड़ा क्लियरली लिखा है और इसके सवाल जब आ जाते तो बच्चे कहते oh my god, what is this? We haven't studied this. So the next equation is about ammonium salts. Now whenever you have an ammonium salts क्या होते हैं? Ammonium salts are basically, ammonia is NH3 gas, but ammonium is basically NH4 plus, right? Now how do you differentiate between the two? Ammonium is an ion, the ammonium ion, and ammonia is the gas. Now, and you could remember it if you don't want to confuse it. For starters, I'd say ammonia has lesser lesser less alphabets compared to ammonium, तो इसीलिए ammonium में एक hydrogen और एक plus charge ज़्यादा है. That's if you are a beginner and you are having difficulty in remembering it. So जब मैं O levels में होता था, मुझे कसम से फ़र्क नहीं पता लगता था कि अमोनियम का हूँ मैं कि अमोनिया का हूँ. तो अमोनिया फिर मैंने ऐसे याद किया भाई अमोनिया इज़ अ गैस, इसमें कम अल्फ़ाबेट्स और जिसमें ज़्यादा हैं तो उसमें हाइड्रोजन भी ज़्यादा और प्लस भी. So that's the ion and that's the gas, right? Now how is the ion formed from the gas? What you do is you take ammonia and you dissolve it in water. And we know that ammonia is a weak base, right? And according to Bronsted-Lowry, bases are the substances, any substance which is going to be, which is accepting a proton, right? Which is a proton acceptor, which is a hydrogen ion acceptor. So if you take NH3 and you dissolve it in water and you want to write the equation, what's going to happen is the NH3, since it's a weak base, it's going to take the proton, from the hydrogen, from the water, right? So ये H plus ion जो है, ये accept करेगा. That's why we say that ammonia is a base, because it's an H plus ion acceptor, and here water is basically giving the H plus ion, so it's acting as an acid, right? So NH3, it reacts with the H plus ion to give you NH4 plus, and that's the birth of the ammonium ion. That's how ammonium ion is formed. And क्यों NH4 plus है? Because you already had NH3, one more hydrogen is added, so NH4 हो गया, and there's a plus here, so then you have to add the plus, right? And what is left behind? Water is made up of H being bonded to the OH. So if one of the H plus ion goes here, the OH minus ion is left behind. That is how you have an ammonium ion, right? Now what are ammonium salts? Whenever you have an ammonium ion, which is the NH4 plus ion, and it's it's bonded to any other anion, कोई भी anion हो, जिस anion के साथ भी इसको, because what is salt? Salt is an ionic compound, right? And ionic compounds are formed because of the oppositely charged ions. So you have an NH4 plus ion, इधर आप कोई भी negative ion लगा ले, इन दोनों को cross multiply कर दे, formula लगा ले, that's going to be called the ammonium salts. For example, let's say I talk about ammonium chloride. So ammonium chloride क्या होगा? NH4 has a charge of plus, and you have Cl which has a charge of minus. So ammonium chloride would be NH4 Cl. If I talk about ammonium sulfate, ammonium is basically NH4 plus, sulfate is SO4 2 minus, cross multiply, you get NH4 whole twice and then SO4. That's ammonium sulfate. So now the reaction for ammonium salts is, and you need to know this, whenever you have any ammonium salt, it reacts with strong bases. Sir, wouldn't it be NH4OH2? Yes, you could, because NH4OH is soluble in water. ना solubility में जब पढ़ाऊंगा NH4OH ही बनेगा इधर. NH4OH ही है because you have a plus ion and a negative ion, so they basically make a bond together, which is NH4. But NH4OH is aqueous, right? ये पानी में soluble है. So we know that any ionic compound, if you dissolve it in water, it splits into its ions, right? The lattice breaks. तो इसलिए आप इसको या यूं लिखे या फॉर्मूले के तौर पे लिखे, it's आपकी choice, right? NH4OH aqueous का मतलब ही यही है कि you have an NH4 plus ion and the OH minus ion. Okay, Rasik? ठीक है जी. So if you have an ammonium salt and you reacted with a strong base, only with a strong base, not with weak bases. Whenever you reacted with a strong base like sodium hydroxide or potassium hydroxide, it's going to give you salt, it's going to give you water, and it's going to give you ammonia gas. Ammonia gas is the NH3 gas. Now, why is this the case? The reason for this should not be known by you guys, but just for your concept, the thing is that ammonium salts, they are slightly acidic. Although आपको वो लेवल में पढ़ाया जाता है कि salts are neutral compounds, no, you never say salts are neutral compounds. अगर आपको भी पढ़ाया भी जा रहा है, because you are not tested on it ना, तो आपको अगर गलत भी पढ़ाया जाता है आप उस पर यकीन करते हो. Salts are not neutral compounds, neutral ionic compounds. Salts are also acidic or basic or neutral in nature, different. Like NaCl is a neutral salt, but magnesium chloride is maybe like slightly acidic. Ammonium chloride, that's slightly acidic. So ammonium के salts है वो कुछ acidic होते हैं, कुछ basic होते हैं, कुछ neutral होते हैं. Salts are not neutral compounds. You can only define salts as any ionic compound is a salt. ठीक है, any ionic compound can be called a salt. Now you guys could argue with me, sir, फिर तो sodium hydroxide भी एक ionic compound है, but the salt is basically the broader term, right? In that, if you have a metal hydroxide, you call it a base. If you have a metal oxide, you call it a base. If you have, inside it, if you have a soluble metal oxide or a soluble metal hydroxide, then you call it an alkali. So salt is basically that broader term, right? And then base is a broader term for the alkali. Now, ammonium salts are slightly acidic. That's why they're going to react with a base to give you salt, water, and ammonia gas. And now, why are they slightly acidic? Obviously, again, not a part of your course, but I could give you some reasoning to it a little bit. अगर आपके पास NH4 plus ion देके और Cl minus ion देके, it makes an ionic compound of ammonium chloride, right? And we check this out. Ionic compound क्या है? They are strong electrostatic force of attraction between oppositely charged ions. So if I want to draw the structure of ammonium chloride, that's going to look something like this, right? If I want to just visualize it for a second. Now, अगर आप इसमें देखें, the ammonium ion, it actually has a hydrogen ion, right? इसने hydrogen ion accept किया है ना? It has the ammonia, इसने नहीं accept किया, ammonia ने hydrogen ion accept किया. Now, this actually has an extra H plus ion. तो इसमें थोड़ी सी tendency होती है to donate that H plus ion. And you're going to study this later on in A levels कि जो इधर base होता है वो उधर side पे acid हो जाता है, जिसको conjugate acid कहते हैं, जो इधर acid होते हैं वो side पे basic हो जाते हैं, जिसको conjugate base कहते हैं, और उसकी reasoning है, but who cares. But for now just understand, since it has the H plus ions, इसके पास एक tendency होती है कि भाई इसने ammonia ने तो H plus gain किया, और इसके पास चूंकि extra H plus है, फिर इसके पास tendency होती है to give back this H plus. That's why we say they're slightly acidic in nature. Right now, how do the equations go, or how do the reactions go? I'll just give you like an example for that. Let's suppose you have ammonium chloride, which is NH4Cl, and it reacts with a strong base, let's suppose sodium hydroxide. Sodium hydroxide and potassium hydroxides are very strong bases. So it's going to give you salt, water, and ammonia gas. Now, how do we visualize it? We say, okay, the OH is basically the OH and the H is gonna give you guys water, right? So OH or एक H निकल जाएगा, that's gonna give you guys water. And what is gonna be left behind is gonna be the NH3 gas here, ना? तो NH3 gas जो होगा इधर left behind होगा, and that's how ammonia gas is formed, right? So the NH3 gas would be left behind, and ammonia gas would be formed, which is a pungent smelling gas. It smells like urine. It smells like piss. It's a strong smelling gas. Strong के लिए अलग word जो है वो pungent इस्तेमाल होता है, right? And And then you have a salt that's going to be formed. Now, which salt is going to be formed? Obviously, you have the metal, which is sodium, and you had the anion, which is Cl. So sodium chloride is going to be formed. Na has a charge of 1 plus, Cl has a charge of 1 minus. You have a ionic compound, which is NaCl. These three are automatically balanced. Why are they balanced? Because you need to understand that आपके पास जो ions हैं वो balance है, तो ये तीन automatically balance हैं. Then for this case scenario, what we do is we again, पहले में हम जब कार्बोनेट्स की बात करते हैं हमने कहा फिर एंड में क्या करें, पहले कार्बन को बैलेंस करें फिर हाइड्रोजन ऑक्सीजन को करें. इसमें भी ऐसी है, लेकिन इसमें चूंकि कार्बन नहीं है, कार्बन की जगह क्या चीज है, नाइट्रोजन है. सो वी से वी फर्स्ट बैलेंस आउट द नाइट्रोजन एंड देन इन द एंड वी आइदर बैलेंस आउट द हाइड्रोजन और द ऑक्सीजन, राइट. सो इन द एंड वी डू दिस, ठीक है. सो अब नाइट्रोजन देख ली, यू हैव वन नाइट्रोजन ऑन द लेफ्ट, यू हैव वन नाइट्रोजन ऑन द राइट, दे आर बैलेंस्ड ऑटोमेटिकली एंड जस्ट बैलेंस आउट द हाइड्रोजन और द ऑक्सीजन. हाइड्रोजन या ऑक्सीजन को हम आसानी से बैलेंस कर सकते हैं. यू हैव वन ऑक्सीजन ऑन द लेफ्ट एंड यू हैव वन ऑक्सीजन on the right, so they're automatically balanced. So the entire equation is balanced. Now the most difficult balancing that could come for this, let me just give you that. अगर मैं phosphate लेता हूँ और हाँ जी चलिए जी, इसकी most difficult balancing करते हैं जो मे बी like A levels वगैरह में आती, right? So और आपने इक्वेशन भी, लेट्स सपोज मैं आपको कह देता हूँ कि यू मेक द इक्वेशन ऑल ऑन योर ओन, ओके. तो अमोनियम फॉस्फेट है मेरे पास. वैसे आपको पूरा का पूरा इक्वेशन कभी भी नहीं कहेंगे खुद ही कि आपको इतने हिंट्स देते हैं कि मैं आपको क्या बताऊं, लेकिन एसिड बेस के मोस्टली दे देते हैं. इन चीज़ों के आपको बहुत हिंट्स देते हैं, लेकिन आ सकता है आपके पास. सो इफ़ यू हैव एन अमोनियम फॉस्फेट एंड यू रिएक्ट इट विद बेरियम हाइड्रोक्साइड, which is also a very strong base. So barium hydroxide, what is going to be formed and what's going to be the balanced equation? I'll give you guys 1.5 minutes to do this because it requires a little bit brain. So let's see if you are able to do this. If not, then I'll do it with you guys. लेकिन अगर ये नहीं भी हुआ तो don't worry. This is like maybe the most difficult balancing out there. ठीक है. आज थोड़ी सी क्लास लंबी होगी guys. I'm gonna go till 8:15, right? Let me message the one-on-one students कि भाई 8:15 तक है. You guys do that up to this point. Okay, let me just drink a little bit water. No, I want the balanced equation. I want the entire balance. Obviously, ammonia, gas, barium, phosphate, and water is going to be formed, but I want the balanced equation, please. अगर जिसने कर लिया वो माइक इस्तेमाल कर ले, मुझे आवाज़ आ जाएगी. I'm just drinking water. राशिक साहब, आपने इतनी ख्वारी की टेक्स्ट करने के लिए, you could have just used the mic for this. Okay. Should I move with it? No? Should we move with it? Yes, no, yes. Move with it. Hakuna Matata. Come on. Done, not done? Are you guys at least trying? Because I can't tell whether you guys are trying or whether you guys are done with it. Or whether it's not happening. जिसने कर लिया सबसे पहले माइक इस्तेमाल करके बोल ले. 10 रुपए इनाम होगा आपका. लास्ट ग्रुप में ना इतने नकल हेड्स थे ना कि दे वुड नॉट वर्क एट ऑल. फिर मुझे मजबूरन क्या करना पड़ा, मैंने प्राइजेस रखे थे. जो बंदा काम करेगा उनको प्राइजेस मिलेंगे. इतने नकल हेड्स थे. लेकिन आप लोग अच्छे हो, आप लोगों को अपनी ग्रेड्स की टेंशन है. अच्छी बात है, होनी भी थोड़ी बहुत चाहिए. हो गया कि नहीं हुआ गाइस? व्हाट्स अप? और शुड आई जस्ट डू इट? आई फील लाइक आई शुड डू इट. आप लोगों का तो मुझे थोड़ा सा पत्ता पीला लग रहा है, right? Let me just do it. So ammonium phosphate, you just do it. Okay, I'll do it. Ammonium is NH4 plus, phosphate is PO4 3 minus. So first of all, let's write the formula for ammonium phosphate. It's going to be NH4 NH4 whole thrice PO4, because you cross multiply, right? Plus barium hydroxide. Barium is 2 plus, hydroxide is 1 minus, cross multiply, you get barium OH whole twice. And that's going to give me salt, water, and ammonia gas, right? So it's going to give me salt, which is going to be the barium phosphate, BaPO4, ammonia gas मिल जाएगा, और पानी जो है hydroxide ions और hydrogen की वजह से पानी मिल जाएगा, right? So you get water, you get NH3, and you get a salt, which is going to be barium phosphate. Now, how do I write barium phosphate? Barium has a charge of 2 plus, PO4 has a charge of 3 minus. Again, we have to balance out the charges. How do we make 2 plus equal to 3 minus? We just take the LCM of the two, you get 6. तो 2 को मैं किससे multiply करूँ कि 6 आए 3 से, 3 को मैं किससे करूँ 2 से, so you have a 6 plus and a 6 minus. That's why we beautifully insert the 3 right here and the 2 right here, right? Because phosphate इधर से आया है और barium जो है वो इधर से आया. And what's going to be the formula for barium phosphate? It's going to be Ba has a charge of 2 plus, PO4 is 3 minus, you cross multiply, you get Ba3 PO4 whole twice, and that's how we get the formula Ba3 PO4 whole twice, and that's the balanced equation up until this point, right? Then the next step is balance out the nitrogen, and then in the end balance out the hydrogen or the oxygen, right? So let's balance out the nitrogen. You have 3 nitrogens, but you times it by 2 because you've already added it through, so you have 6 nitrogens on the left. And how do we know? Because 3 times 1, that's 3, and 3 times 2, then that's 6, right? So 6 nitrogens on the left hand side. How many nitrogens do you have on the right? You only have 1 nitrogen on the right, so 1 को मैं किससे multiply करूँ कि 6i, x is equal to 6, right? So we add the 6 right here, and then we have to balance out the hydrogen or the oxygen. So if you check this out, let's just balance out hydrogens because that's easier, right? You have 3 times 4, that's 12. 12 times 2, you have 24 hydrogens here, and then plus you have here hydrogens are here too. So 2 times 1, that's 2, and then 2 times 3, that's 6. So 24 plus 6, you have 30 hydrogens on the left hand side. And if you check the hydrogens on the right hand side, you have 6 times 3, that's 18. So 18 hydrogens are already present. Let's minus 18 from 30. What do you get? 12 hydrogens. So you need 12 more hydrogens, right? So पानी में 2 को मैं किससे multiply करूँ कि 12 आए? X is equal to 12 over 2, that's 6, and that's the balanced equation. This was the most difficult balancing equation that could come even in your A levels. A levels में ये नहीं आएगा आपका, लेकिन just for, you know, conceptual purposes, I hope it worked, right? Now we're done with all the equations for acid, bases, and salts. Just let me just write one more thing. We also need to learn something called the ionic equation. Now, what is the ionic equation? The ionic equations are those reactions in which we do not mention the spectator ions. So we write the equation without the spectator ions. Spectator ions हम इसमें नहीं लिखते हैं. Spectator ions were those ions which do not take part in the reaction, or which do not take part in the reaction. And the way we used to identify them was, सारे छोड़ के जब बैलेंसिंग खत्म हो गई ना, सारे निकल गए. The way we used to identify them was कि either the charges on both hand sides are the same and the state, or we say the oxidation state on both hand sides of those equations are same, right? So we check an acid-base reaction in which, let's suppose I take an acid which is basically hydrochloric acid, and I react it with the base. Let's suppose I take sodium hydroxide as the base. It gives me salt and water, right? And how does it give me salt? Na reacts with a Cl to give me NaCl, and H reacts with the OH to give me H2O. Now, the way we could write the ionic equation is we separate everything, right? So सारे ions को आप separate कर लो, and then I'll tell you something in the end. So अगर मैं sodium hydroxide aqueous की बात करूँगा, that means you have Na plus and OH minus as the ions. HCl की अगर मैं बात करूँगा, that means that you have the H plus ion and the Cl minus ions as the ions. How do I know? Because see, a base is any substance when dissolved in water gives you the hydroxide. And so if I'm talking about this base, it gives me the Na plus and the OH minus ions. It's acid, which means it has already given me the H plus ions and the Cl minus ion. And together, that gives me an ionic compound, which is also aqueous. That means that you will have an Na plus ion. And aqueous का मतलब पानी में dissolve हो चुका है, so ions में convert हो चुका है. So NaCl means that you have free moving Na plus ion and Cl minus ion. And obviously, if you have charges, in सबका state symbol aqueous ही है. बहुत से बच्चों का को आयंस के चार्ज का स्टेट सिंबल नहीं था. आयंस का स्टेट सिंबल भी एक्वस ही होता है. आयंस बनते ही ऐसे हैं, आयनिक कंपाउंड से आयंस बनते ही ऐसे व्हेन यू डिसॉल्व इन वाटर. नाउ H2O, क्या ये आयनिक कंपाउंड है? नो, इट्स अ कोवेलेंट मॉलिक्यूल, राइट? H is a non-metal, O is a non-metal, they've bonded together, they've shared a pair of electrons with each other, right? So H2O is basically a covalent molecule. Liquid से भी पता चला, aqueous नहीं, it's not an ionic compound, right? So H2O liquid as it is आ जाएगा. Now let's check it out. You had Na plus on the left hand side, and that was aqueous, and you have the same Na plus on the right hand side, and that's also aqueous. So these two cancel out because if we want to write the ionic equation, right, that's called the full equation. And the ionic equation is the equation in which we do not write the spectator ions, right? So we are going to eliminate the spectator ions here. So Na plus cut gaya, Cl minus and Cl minus are the same on the right hand side. The only thing that is different is the H plus ion and the OH minus ions. And now on the right hand side, you no longer have the H plus and the OH minus ions. You only have H2. That's why we say neutralization reactions are those reactions in which water is formed. Boom, shakalaka. And mind you guys, the beauty is that all acid-base reactions are gonna have this as their ionic equation, because that's the only change that is gonna take place. बाकी सारे ions as it is है. The only change that is taking place inside this reaction is the H plus ion reacting with the OH minus ion to give you water. देख लें, नहीं यकीन आ रहा, कर लें, कोई भी acid base ले लें. Like let's suppose I want to take magnesium hydroxide and I reacted with like phosphoric acid which is H3PO4. आपके पास full equation की बात करूँ, magnesium जो है magnesium phosphate बनेगा Mg3PO4 whole twice and water बनेगा H2O, right? And you could balance it out on your own. Who cares? Nobody wants to care about the balance. For now, we just want to understand कि इसका ionic equation क्या बनेगा. Obviously, magnesium gives you a 2 plus ion, OH is basically the hydroxide, and ये सारे aqueous हैं. They are all aqueous, right? But except water is H2O liquid, right? So Mg2 plus. अच्छा, आप लोग कुछ पूछ सकते हैं कि भाई सर कुछ salts हैं वो aqueous नहीं होते, वो हम आगे solubility जब पढ़ लेंगे आपको पता चल जाएगा कि कौन से salts aqueous होते हैं कौन से नहीं होते. And then you'll also be able to write all the state simples of every single equation. ठीक है? So H3PO4 में you have the H plus ions and the PO4 3 minus ions, and then here on the right hand side again you have the Mg2 plus ions, you have the PO4 3 minus ions, but you have H2O liquid, right? Which means ये H2O as it is रहेगा, it's not aqueous, right? And even if you balance this out ना, तो वही बात हो जाएगी कि magnesium 3 है, इधर भी 3, so those 3 Mg2 pluses would cut out with 3 Mg2. So there's no need to balance it out if you're writing the ionic equation here in this case, in acid-base scenario, right? So Mg2 plus cuts out with Mg2 plus because they're the same. PO4 3 minus cuts out with PO4 3 minus, and the only thing that is changed is the OH minus reacting with the H plus ions to give you water. So all acid base, even if they say carbonic flana timcana acid is acetic acid or citric acid reacts with the base, what's the ionic equation? अब आप लोग सोच रहे सर ने तो citric acid का formula ही नहीं पढ़ा. No. They just want to check the concept. Does this student know that every acid base reaction has this equation as its ionic equation? Because that's the only change that is taking place. Neutralization क्या हो रही है? पानी बन रहा है. That's the only change. That's why you call it the neutralization reactions. ठीक है? So this was it for the ionic equations and all the equations. Now let's talk about the types of oxides, right? So we are done with the most chunk of acid bases and salts. हमने सारे के सारे इसके equations कर लिए. अब हम जरा oxides पे जाते हैं, right? और before we move on to oxides, let me just give you guys the other equation, which is basically acids तो हमने पढ़ ली, लेकिन हमने सिर्फ inorganic acids, हमने organic chemistry में एक चीज skip की थी, वो इधर हमने करनी है. Acid plus, we've studied all these equations, right? So acids plus bases, be it metal hydroxides or metal oxides or even metal carbonates, which are weak bases, their metal carbonate में तो salt भी बनेगा, पानी भी बनेगा, and H2O भी बनेगा, but salt, pani and carbon dioxide, right? And here it's going to be only salt and water, and here it's also going to be only salt and water. And whenever you have an acid, it reacts with a metal. If acids and metal only react, then that gives you salt and hydrogen gas, right? So these are the two equations that these are the 1 2 3 4 and one is ammonium का जो आपने पढ़े. 4 equations. अब देखें जो acids reaction करें हमने पढ़े carboxylic acids are also acids. So automatically the equations, all the reactions that inorganic acids undergo carboxylic acids भी वही equations करेंगे. Like for example, let's suppose you have magnesium and you react it with ethanoic acid, which is CH3COOH. I hope you guys remember the formulas. How is ethanoic acid CH3COOH? Because the general formula for, you know, the carboxylic acid was CnH2n plus 1 COOH, right? So if we're talking about ethanoic acid, which means there should be two carbons, eth means two, so a carbon पहले से present है, insert one instead of the n, right? That was the only thing we had to be careful about. Now होगा क्या, इसमें थोड़ा सा change होता है the way you write the equation. The magnesium is going to basically displace this hydrogen. Which hydrogen? Right here. That's the acid वाला hydrogen. ये hydrogen acid का होता है. So magnesium goes here, displaces this hydrogen and gives you magnesium ethanoate. So this was basically esterification में याद है हम क्या करते थे, हम alcohol का जो name है वो alkyl हो जाता था, मतलब pentanol अगर होता था pentyl हम कहते थे, butanol butyl, ethanol ethyl, and जो acid का name होता था वो butanoic acid या propanoic acid से butanoate, propanoate, ethanoate. तो इधर भी चूंकि salt बन रहा है, the anion बना है, anion is basically called the 8 ion, right? So carboxylate ion. तो इधर ethanoic acid था, so ethanoate would be the ion, right? And ethanoate is the ion, और क्या चीज़ बन रही है, magnesium ethanoate. So the way we name it is going to be again metal का name as it is magnesium and ethanoate as it is, which is जो आपके पास naming जैसे आप esters में करते थे, ठीक है? So the magnesium is going to displace this hydrogen. You're going to get CH3 COO, and then you get a whole twice an Mg. And the way we came up with this formula is because Mg makes an ion of 2 plus, and all carboxylic acid ions, this is going to be there. So hydrogen remove हो जाएगा, displace हो जाएगा, जो भी है, but the ion is going to be this entire chunk. And all these carboxylate ions, they have a charge of minus, right? So whatever this is, if be it butanoate, propanoate, जो भी है इसके ऊपर ये minus का charge. It does not make an ion of 2 minus, 3 minus, 10 minus, 20 minus. No, it only makes an ion of 1 minus. जैसे कि आपके पास phosphate is 3 minus, sulfate is 2 minus. तो इसमें जो सा भी carboxylic acid होता है, it makes an ion of minus, right? And when you cross multiply, here the difference is हम metal को बाद में लिखते हैं. Naming तो यही है magnesium ethanoate, but we write the metal after the ethanoate ion. So you have when you cross multiply, you end up with CH3COO whole twice an Mg, and then you get what hydrogen gas for this, because metal plus acid gives you salt and hydrogen gas. And the balancing is the same, right? So for 1 Mg2 plus कितने ethanoate ions चाहिए? 2. So you insert the beautiful 2 right here, and in the end just balance out hydrogens. आपके पास 3 times 2 6 hydrogens इधर हैं, and then you have how many hydrogens on the left? You have 3 plus 1 4, 4 times 2 8 hydrogens on the left. 6 are already present, so 8 minus 6 you get 2 और चाहिए आपको, और 2 are automatically present. So this is a balanced equation, right? Let's suppose आपको 4 और चाहिए थे, तो फिर 2 को मैं किससे multiply करूँ कि 4 I 2 से, then you insert the 2. And this is how all the reactions for all the carboxylic acids come into being. बाकी सारा same to same है, सब का सब same है, right? Now the last bit that I want to discuss is types of oxide, because I want to just finish it off. कल हम solubility rules and preparations of salts करेंगे, ठीक है? Now what are types? So we have to go till like 8:15 or 8:10. Okay, sorry guys, but आप थोड़ा सा मेरे साथ तहम्मुल से रहे. Don't leave the class, just stay with me, and we have to just finish this off, right? Now the next bit is types of oxides. तो acid, bases and salts almost खत्म हो गए हैं. हम अब इसकी further sub categories में डाल रहे हैं. Types of oxides. First of all, let's understand oxides होते क्या हैं. Oxides are basically the binary compounds of oxygen. Binary compounds आपको याद है क्या था? Stoichiometry से पहले पढ़ा था. Binary compounds of oxygen का मतलब है कि you only have 2 elements and they make a compound, and one of those element is gonna be oxygen, right? 2 types of elements. Atoms उनके ज़्यादा हो सकते हैं, but the types of elements are gonna be 2, like CaO. Let's suppose I give you guys like a few examples, and I want you guys to choose which ones are oxides, right? So calcium sulfate मैं लिख लूँ, SO2 लिख लूँ, Na2, CO3 लिख लूँ. Now if you check this out, which one are oxides? Obviously the oxides are always also going to be named in the end, right? Like CaO is calcium oxide. It was automatically oxide, right? And if you check the balancing, if you check the definition out, binary compounds of a bi means 2 elements होने चाहिए, जिसमें से एक oxygen होना चाहिए, एक और, एक element चाहिए, एक element चाहिए. If you check this out, that's not an oxide. Why? Because पहले तो naming से भी पता लग जाएगा, it's calcium sulfate, not an oxide, right? लेकिन अगर आप आप इसको डेफिनेशन के थ्रू भी चेक करें, it's not a binary compound of any oxygen, because it not only has two elements, it actually has three elements. One is calcium, one is sulfur, and one is oxygen. Here it only has two elements, and one of which is oxygen. That's why it's oxide, and that's why the naming is sulfur dioxide. Here if you check this out, this is again sodium carbonate. Oxide तो एक naming नहीं है, और दूसरी बात ये है कि अगर आप definition से भी check करें, you don't have two elements only, one of which is oxygen. You have three elements. One is sodium, one is carbon, one is oxygen. So it's not a binary compound, it's a trinary compound, right? There's no such thing as trinary, but yeah, it's not a binary compound, right? Now there are types of oxides. The first type is basic oxide, and you guys just need to know these things. Now what are basic oxides? Basic oxides are those oxides which are going to give you guys the hydroxide ion, right? So when you dissolve it in water, they give you the hydroxide ions. That's why we call them basic oxide, because they are basic in nature. They act as a base, right? So basic in nature hote hain, they act as a base. And why do they act basic in nature? Because when you dissolve it in water, they give you the hydroxide ions. And which oxides are basic in nature? All metal oxides are basic in nature. All metal oxides, right? And then I'll tell you exceptions later on. But for now, just understand that all metal oxides are basic in nature. And therefore, it also reacts with acid to give you guys, it also reacts with acid to give you guys salt and water. And the reason for that is because they are basic in nature. So basically leads to an acid-base reaction, right? Or metal, अगर मैं आपको बताऊं कि कैसे hydroxide ion देते हैं, so let's suppose you take sodium oxide, and I'm saying obviously sodium oxide is basic in nature because I said all metal oxides are basic, right? So this is basic in nature automatically, which means that if I add it to water, it's going to give me the hydroxide ion. And how does it give me the hydroxide ion? Obviously the Na and the Na2O and the H2O, they're going to react together to give you guys sodium hydroxide, and that's how it gives you the Na plus ion and the OH minus ion, but we just say sodium hydroxide ion देते, right? और ये हम later on ये reaction सीखेंगे metal oxides और water के, ये हम later on उसमें सीखेंगे what's it called, metals जब हम पढ़ रहे हो, right? तो ये metals की reactions है. So whenever you have a metal oxide and it's basic in nature, you add it to water, it will always give you the hydroxide ions. That's why we say they are basic in nature, and that is the reason why they also react with acids. But there are some exceptions, right? And the exceptions are, अभी तो आपके कोर्स में exceptions में सिर्फ zinc oxide रह गया, and I guess zinc oxide और aluminum oxide रह गया, बाकी नहीं, I think aluminum lead oxide रह गया, बाकी दो को हटा दिया, but मैं तीनों बता दूंगा. तीन exceptions इसमें कौन कौन से हैं? You have lead oxide as the exception, you have aluminum oxide as the exception, and you have zinc oxide as the exception. Now you guys could say, sir, you just told us that all metal oxides are basic in nature. That's also metal oxide, that's also metal oxide, that's also metal oxide. That's why I said, okay, guys, don't relax a little bit. There are exceptions. And the reason why these, what are they going to be called if they're not basic oxides? We actually call these three amphoteric oxide. And the reason why we call them amphoteric oxides is because amphoteric oxides are those oxides which can act as an acid, or can act as a base. Now this is going to depend as a base. And the proper way to talk about amphoteric, so if the examiner says what is an amphoteric oxide, they are those oxides which can act as an acid when you react it with a base, when reacted with a base. And they are those oxides which can also act as a base when you react it with an acid. When reacted with an acid. So it depends what they are reacted with. So the thing about this is, like, let's suppose you take Al2O3 and I say, is this a basic oxide or is this an acidic oxide? You guys say it's amphoteric oxide. It can act as a base if you add it to acid. So if I add it to HCl, this is going to act as my base. So obviously aluminum chloride is going to be formed and H2O water is going to be formed. And if I add it to the base, which is like, let's suppose sodium hydroxide के साथ मैं इसको add करूं, then this is gonna act as an acid. So they mostly ask this question कि, oh, they'll give you an amphoteric oxide and react it with an acid, and they're gonna say, what is this acting as? And they're gonna first ask you the definition, and then you're gonna say it's acting as a base because you are reacting it with a metal, and here it's reacting with an acid because you're reacting with the base. Now what equation is this? Not a part of your course. You can have this equation, you know कि base plus this, लेकिन इधर ये acid कैसे act करता करते हैं, इससे क्या रिएक्शन बनता है, nobody cares, it's not a part of your course, right? You get sodium aluminate plus water, but not a part of your course. So these were amphoteric oxide, right? The next type is, so these are the two types, and the third type is basically your what's it called, acidic oxides. अब acidic oxides क्या बोला? Acidic oxides are those oxides which act as an acid, right? And the reason why you could say that they act as an acid is because they react with bases, right? That's the first step. If you take an acidic oxide and you react it with a base, it is absolutely going to react with a base. And which oxides are acidic oxides? All non-metal oxides are acidic oxides. Now obviously इसमें भी exceptions है, but for now all non-metal oxides are acidic oxides. Give me a sec, Javeria. All non-metal oxides are acidic oxides. And which are non-metal oxides? The one that come here, that are on the right side of this staircase. So in सब के जो metal oxide, in non-metal oxide, जो in सब के oxides होंगे, they're gonna be acidic oxides, right? Because, and the reason why they're acidic oxides, because if you add them to water, another reason is कि पहले तो ये है कि acidic oxides इसलिए because they react with base, and the reason why you call them acidic oxides, जैसे basic oxides को हम basic oxide इसलिए कहते थे जब हम उनको पानी में dissolve करते थे, they gave us the hydroxide ions. And here is it's the same thing here. The reason why they're called acidic oxides is because if you add it to water, they give you acids. They give acids. उसमें metal oxides को अगर आप पानी में डालते थे, that gave you bases. That's why they were called basic oxide. It gave you the hydroxide ion, and they were acting as bases. Here, the reason why they're called acidic oxide is because if you add them to water, they give acids, and you need to know which acid is going to be formed. Like for example, और कुछ बहुत common ही है, SO2 को अगर मैं पानी में डाल देता हूँ, it's going to give me an acid which is H2SO3. And the reason for that is, मैंने आपको stoichiometry में भी ये पढ़ाया था, SO2 का जो anion होता है, एक ऑक्सीजन उसमें बढ़ा, तो it's going to be the anion for SO2 is SO3 2 minus, और H plus as it is है, cross multiply you get H2SO3. So SO2 plus H2O gives you H2SO3. Similarly, SO3 का जो acid होगा वो क्या होगा? SO3 का anion क्या है? एक ऑक्सीजन ऐड करो और चार्ज उसका अपना लगा लो. If you add one oxygen, it gives you SO4 and sulfate ion बनाता है. ठीक है? That's the sulfite ion. That's the sulfate ion, right? So sulfate ion is SO4 2 minus है, H plus as it is है. This gives me H2SO4. ये हमने prerequisite में किया था moles and stoichiometry के, right? So if I take SO3 and I add it to water, it gives me sulfuric acid, H2SO4. And if I take SO2 and I add it to water, it gives me sulfurous acid, right? तो ये आपके पास है. अच्छा, अगर मैं NO2 लेता हूँ, so NO2 का anion कौन सा? NO2 को अगर मैं पानी में डालता हूँ, क्या एसिड बनेगा? It's pretty simple. You guys say कि okay, NO3 is in this group. Yes. So if I take NO2 and I add it to water, obviously it's gonna give me an acid, right? Because it's a non-metal oxide, and non-metal oxides are all acidic oxides. And then I'll give you exceptions in a while. So NO2 का अगर मैं पानी में ऐड करूँ, क्या एसिड का फॉर्मूला क्या होगा? They mostly, sometimes कुछ बार पेपर में आया हुआ है, and students were unable to do this, and it is a part of your course. So which acid is gonna be formed? Obviously NO2 के साथ एक ऑक्सीजन बढ़ा दें, which is NO3, और NO3 का चार्ज क्या होता है? Minus, right? So NO3 minus and H plus, cross multiply, you get HNO3 as the acid. So HNO3 is the acid that's going to be forming, right? And let's suppose you had NO, which is nitrogen oxide, and you add it to water. Now which acid is going to be formed? That's the question. NO में एक oxygen बढ़ा दे, that gives you NO2, and the anion would be NO2 minus, right? Because NO के ऊपर चार्ज, जब हम नाइट्रेट की बात करते हैं, उस पर भी माइनस का चार्ज है, तो NO2 के ऊपर भी माइनस का चार्ज होगा. That's how you make the anion of the acidic oxides, right? And H plus as it is, I guess. So H plus and NO2 cross multiply, you get HNO2 as the acid, which is nitrous acid, right? We've learned the naming previously. So all non-metal oxides are acidic oxides, except, now there are some exceptions, H2O, carbon monoxide. Carbon monoxide, don't get me wrong, carbon monoxide is poisonous, it's toxic, blah, blah, blah. It is, it can kill you in seconds, but it's not an acidic oxide. It's slightly भी नहीं है. आप नहीं कह सकते it's an acidic. That's why we considered this as the neutral oxides, right? So H2O, पानी, CO, and N2O, not NO2 or NO, not NO2 or NO. I'm not talking about NO2 or NO. That's NO2 is nitrogen dioxide, that's nitrogen oxide, and And here N2O is basically nitrous oxide. Nobody needs to know this naming for it, right? But N2O or NO2 or NO mein fark hai, right? That's all I want to tell you guys. N2O is different from NO2 and NO. So these three oxides are basically the neutral oxides that you need to know. So ye sare neutral hai. Now why do you call them neutral oxides? Because they neither show basic or acidic properties, right? Water को आप water में डालो, that doesn't make sense, right? CO को आप पानी में डालो, ना वो H plus आयन देता है, ना वो OH minus आयन देता है, ना वो acid देता है, ना वो base देता है. N2O को आप पानी में डालो, ना वो acid देता है, ना वो base देता है. Nobody cares, right? And hence they do not form any salts, right? When you react it with acids or bases, they don't form any salts. Now the question is, N2O sir क्या बोला है? वैसे fun fact for you, it's not the question, it's like a fun fact. ना N2O जो है आपका laughing gas होता है. Laughing gas. One is voice changing gas. I think that's helium. But N2O is laughing gas जो आपको हंसना शुरू कर देती है. You start laughing, right? And think about it. If it was acidic in nature, every time you would take a puff of the laughing gas, आप साथ साथ मर भी रहे होते, right? So N2O is basically the laughing gas, and that is basically how does that happen? What do you mean? How do you laugh with it? I don't know. That changes your entire body chemistry. For that, I needed to be a biochemist, right? तो अगर आप biochemistry में चले जाएं, तो body को जब आप study करते हैं और फिर इसको study करते हैं और वो reactions पढ़ते हैं, then you also let me know. So Javeria, your question कि CO2 is also acidic? Absolutely, right? Because the only non-metal oxides which are neutral are N2O, H2O, and CO, and that's basically all there is. कल हम जो है solubilities पढ़ेंगे और फिर हम as a preparation of salts पढ़ेंगे. Any questions, guys? Questions? Ask away.